Hey everyone, today I will be analyzing an article written on NBC by Erica Edwards. This article, titled Data Investigation Childhood Vaccination Rates Are Backsliding Across the U.S., provides its targeted audience, parents with younger children, with both scientific data and stories from nurses and parents that help to convince parents to get their children up to date on all their vaccines. This is the primary purpose of the article. The author is trying to persuade parents to get their children vaccinated by presenting them with scientific data like herd immunity, which occurs when a certain percentage of the population is vaccinated against a disease or infection. This percentage, which Cleveland Clinic defines as typically being around the 95% mark, ensures that any contagious disease or infection has almost no chance of spreading throughout a population. This is primarily due to it being harder for viruses to infect someone that is vaccinated against them, which in turn means that the virus cannot use you as a host to infect other people within that same population. This information leads me to the context of this article. This article focuses on the St. Louis metro area, which has been a major center for researching and developing vaccines. Ironically, St. Louis has seen a sharp decline in vaccination rates among students in kindergarten. The amount of students entering kindergarten in St. Louis, up to date on all the required vaccinations for school enrollment, has fallen from 91.6% in 2010 to just 75.9% in 2024. These declining vaccination rates are the exigence as to why the author chose to write this article. This trend is not just limited to St. Louis. In Gaines County, Texas, there was an outbreak of measles, a highly contagious virus that killed 3 people. The vaccination rate against this virus in this area is 77%, which means that the St. Louis metro area is very vulnerable to a similar outbreak happening. Before reading this article, I did not know that vaccination rates had declined sharply in certain areas of the US, as I typically do not keep up with or read the news very much. However, I was always in favor of getting vaccinated as long as the vaccines had been properly tested to ensure that they were safe for people to get. With my position on this matter in mind, I was at first a bit confused as to why so many parents were not getting their children vaccinated. This is primarily due to me getting vaccinated when I was little, which was something that I viewed as normal and that every kid got done. This bias made it hard for me to understand why vaccination rates were declining. After analyzing the article, I was able to reach a conclusion as to why this was happening. This conclusion helped to give me the components needed to form my thesis statement. This article by Erica Edwards on NBC presents a strong argument backed by medical data to parents with younger children that are on the fence about vaccinations on how getting their children vaccinated is what is safest for both their child and the community they live in, which made an argument that was able to affirm my position on the matter, but glosses over the distrust that some parents have in regards to vaccine, which could lead to the article's targeted audience still not buying into the argument that the author is trying to make. In the beginning of the article, the author includes a quote from an interview with a school nurse that I found to be interesting. Virginia Wilson, the lead nurse at a charter school in St. Louis, said that we're just in a waiting phase before measles comes and rocks the state of Missouri. This quote made me feel a bit uneasy, as it suggests that there would be a pandemic of sorts in the state and potentially the rest of the country if declining vaccination rates are not addressed. This would lead me to conclude that this quote would make parents feel the same way, especially since they have more in the stake of the matter if they have a young child. While this quote seeks to strike fear in parents that are against vaccinations or have not yet gotten their children vaccinated, it fails to address in depth why some parents still do not get their children vaccinated in light of all of the scientific data that is out there. However, this is cleared up in a separate quote in the article from Dr. Thomas McKinney, who works for a clinic that provides families in underprivileged areas with medical services. In his quote from an interview in the article, he says that it can be difficult, especially if you don't have a primary care physician. It takes time for parents to take off work, set up appointments to come in for vaccines. This doctor's perspective helps us to understand that for some parents, not getting their children vaccinated is not a choice, but rather a reality of the circumstances they are under. A separate story included in the article helps to make this quote more applicable in a real-world setting. Diamond Lewis, a parent with a 5-year-old son in St. Louis, had difficulty getting access to transportation to take her son to his doctor appointment for his vaccinations. As a result of her not having access to a car, she had to take a 10-minute walk to a nearby bus stop, which after she got off that, she had to take a train that led her to a second bus stop, which then got her to within a 5-minute walk of the doctor's office. In total, this trip took 2 hours to complete. The author, including these perspectives, is a big strength of the article, as she helps to present the declining vaccination rates not solely as something that is a personal choice by parents, but rather something that is just not easily within reach for most people. While the author does a good job of providing a strong scientific backed data and personal experiences from both parents and nurses that backs the first portion of my thesis statement, she fails to dive deeper into another crucial aspect of the declining vaccination rates: the distrust that some people have in regards to some vaccinations. The most information that the author provides for any aspect of this portion of the argument is that 78% of US adults surveyed somewhat or strongly in support of vaccination. Interestingly, this number is pretty close to the percentage of kids that were vaccinated heading into kindergarten in St. Louis, 75.9%. While the author failing to mention more in depth why some parents do not trust vaccines does not impact my stance on the argument she is trying to make, it glosses over her main intended audience, parents with younger children, and more specifically, parents with younger children that are skeptical or against getting their children vaccinated. This key flaw in the author's argument almost makes most of the scientific data irrelevant, as it fails to address a key portion of the personal decision that some parents make in regards to getting their children vaccinated. When looking at a survey conducted by the CDC, I was able to find out why some parents were hesitant to get their children vaccinated. The primary reasons were fears over potential side effects of vaccines, believing that a particular disease is not serious enough to require vaccination, and a belief that the vaccine was not effective. Including this would have strengthened the author's argument and made for a more well-rounded and balanced argument, and would have addressed the weaknesses presented in my thesis statement. After researching this topic, I was able to learn that parents not getting their children vaccinated is not always a personal choice, but rather one of circumstance. In order to combat this, I think that access to vaccines should be made more easily accessible for people in areas of need, which would help to address this problem and improve vaccination numbers. All in all, my stance on this topic has remained constant. I am still in favor of vaccines as long as they are properly tested, but I feel as if making them more available should be implemented more.